Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Grilling JR with the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross. Jim, how are you, man?
I'm good, Connie. Better than I probably deserve to be. Glad to see you. You look bright and cheerful and healthy. And but things are good here, man. I'm back down in Jacksonville Beach, so it's hard to complain about my surroundings. Weather's good. Living on the beach is nice. I'm very blessed. I'm even more blessed. So we have a great audience that are joining us here today, and it's going to be a good show. This is going to be a fun show. A little watch along. I kind of have fun with these things, but we got a lot of other things to talk about too, right?
We do indeed. First, let's start right at the top of the deal here. This past week, you went to NYC, the big Comic-Con. Man, that tells you things are getting back to normal, right? Jim Ross at a Comic-Con.
Yeah, you know, I've turned down more offers than I've received, seemingly. And I just kind of backed off of it, especially during the COVID business, all the restrictions and the issues and so forth. So I love doing them. I love doing Comic Cons, and I love making these appearances and talking to the fans and so forth. But because of the COVID and all those things, I kind of backed away a little bit. So, but it was first class, big time. It's exactly what you'd have thought a New York City Comic Con would be. Highly organized, a lot of traffic, and I'm really glad that I took that opportunity. So I appreciate the folks at the New York City Comic Con. Hopefully I think we're going to try to do some more business here and there. The gentleman that brought me in owns a bunch of memorabilia stores. So his schedules work out going forward. I'll be doing a few more of them, and I enjoy it. I'm glad that we're at that point in the game that we can still go out and do those things.
No doubt about it. It's fun just to have an opportunity to go out and meet some of your favorite folks. And of course, Tony Schiavone was a big part of Comic-Con.
He drew the house.
He's got his new graphic novel. Jim, what's your favorite graphic novel?
I was a teenage werewolf.
Really?
No, I don't have a fucking clue. I don't know. Right now it's Tony's. It's rapidly moved up the charts. #1 with a bullet. Actually doing very well. Seriously.
Yeah, it's the #1 on Amazon, I think. And you can find out more about it over at buttsandseatscomic.com. But man, Tony Schiavone, he's had a little bit of a resurgence here, has he not? I mean, back on TV, now he's got a comic book. We got to stop this dude. What the hell?
He's gone a long way from that barista days.
Yeah, I would say so.
I still think that's one of the most memorable sequences of dialogue when Britt Baker called him out on being a barista working at Starbucks. And I thought that was just, they were classic. He and she have a great timing, great rapport. I think it's kind of fun, but nonetheless, I congratulate Tony and his whole team for the success that they're having. And folks, you get a chance, check it out. At least check it out, for God's sakes. And you might enjoy it. They put a lot of work in it, and I think it looks pretty damn entertaining.
No, without question, Dirk Manning and his crew have done a great job for Tony. It's buttsandseatscomic.com. I want to also mention that, man, you're like in full swing of things, back on the road, you know, Philadelphia, New York City. You're hitting all your old towns again because AEW is back working in front of seemingly full houses. And boy, in the more recent weeks, there's been a ton of debate about WWE drawing versus AEW, and WWE guys were saying, well, the tickets cost more. And hey, here's the thing. I don't really care to compare sort of A versus B as much as I do say, man, what a healthy sign for wrestling fans and the wrestling business that we've now got two promotions doing pretty good business.
Yeah, I think that's good for pro wrestling, period. And I'm not going to overanalyze it. I'm not going to analyze their ticket prices or any of that shit. It's just, that's just, why can't we all just be happy that our business is good?
There you go.
Because that's what matters. I mean, the healthier pro wrestling is, the healthier Grilling JR is going to be. It's a trickle down.
Yeah,
we all share in the success of our business, and I'm really glad that we're at this stage. Now, who the hell would have thought, 2 years ago, that we'd be talking about it in these terms? Because all of a sudden AEW has become very, very relevant. And, I believe that's all due to Tony Khan's opening up the checkbook and signing some of the best talents in the world. And I don't say that in a knock to the other guys. That's what wrestling fans take it, though. For God's sakes, JR is knocking the WWE again. How can he do that? He was there 26 years. He made a lot of money. He had his legacy's there. He's in their Hall of Fame. I'm not knocking him. All I'm saying is that 2 years ago, when AEW started its journey, I don't think any of us, including me, perceived that it would grow to the level that it has grown in this length of time. It's pretty astonishing. So the winners of all this are the fans, but some fans just don't want to. They don't have that mindset, and I think that's a sad state of affairs. We've battled for years and years, Conrad, to be acknowledged by the public. Pro wrestling, it's a carny business. It's it's a slap and go. It's a grunt and groan. Nobody wants to cover it, and now everybody wants to cover it. And our own people, our own fan base, in some degree, are bitching about it. And I'm trying to figure out why. I just don't get it. Well, it's because we're loyal to WWE all those years. I go on TV or on this on our podcast, say I thought that our last pay-per-view was one of the best pay-per-views, if not the best, that I'd worked in years and years, or maybe forever. That was my opinion, but I got castigated over it, castrated too. And the man don't want to lose his balls.
Right.
So I don't understand it. But in any event, I'm going to enjoy the ride, man. I'm going to enjoy going to work. I'm going to enjoy the whole thing and count my blessings that I'm here at the right place at the right time once again. And here we are. So I'm happy. I hope everybody else can be happy today.
Well, we're going to be happy because we're going to be doing a watch along from 1996. And that's always fun to go back and take a look at these old shows. And if I'm honest with you, Jim, I think the whole point of our show is nostalgia, right? We want to go back and remember the way things were. And a lot of us listen to the music that, like our parents used to make us listen to the music that they listened to. Right. And now we find ourselves doing that. Like I'm listening to Nirvana and Metallica, and I'm sure my kids are thinking the same thing. Like, Dad, we got to listen to the new stuff. So we're going to do that today and help everybody go back to their childhood 25 years ago. Well, not you, Jim. You were a grown man. Anyway.
I was grown up.
1996, man. What an important year for professional wrestling. Of course, the NWO became a thing. Stone Cold Steve Austin dropped that infamous now Austin 316 promo, but there really felt like competition for Vince McMahon and the World Wrestling Federation for years and years, even going back to 87, 88, 89, 90, all the way through to 1996. WCW / the NWA before them was really like Vince McMahon's little brother in this more modern era of wrestling. Yeah. They just stood no chance. But for the first time now, there's real competition in 96. And people over the years have said Vince does better with competition.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I think so. It motivates him. He didn't like to lose. And I think the battle on Wednesday nights is indicative of that statement. That's why they moved to Tuesday. He didn't like getting his ass beat every Wednesday night. And I know we didn't win every Wednesday night. I get that, folks. But we won most of them. And winning one is too many for him. So he's very competitive. He believes he owns the genre. He is the Godfather, like you are the Podfather. And I get it. I understand it. And I respect and appreciate his competitiveness. But, he works better when there's a little pressure on him. And I think that's been proven time and time again. So he's a different breed of cat when it comes to that stuff. And reading on Thursdays, who got this audience and this show got that audience, I can promise you was an issue. It was definitely an issue without question.
It's always been, I don't know, important to look back at the history of wrestling and just the history of all things, right? To sort of see what might happen in the future, help us predict what's going to happen in the future. And boy, this is one of those moments where I think people are going to draw a lot of parallels. Of course, we're talking about Bret Hart returning to action. There had been a lot of talk that, well, Kevin Nash left and, Scott Hall left and, Sean Waltman left. It felt like all the momentum was on the WCW side of things. Do you think Vince McMahon felt like, well, if we lose Bret, that's too much? The idea being, I know people would say with Vince, he never sold anything. So when Hall leaves and Nash leaves and Waltman leaves, he's quote unquote not selling it, meaning it doesn't seem like he's still confident he's got the better product. But did he feel like perhaps Bret Hart leaving would have been too much?
He may have. He was at one time, Vince and Bret were very close. And Bret was looked at as one of those homegrown guys. And anytime you're a promoter and one of your homegrown guys starts succeeding, you feel a great sense of accomplishment. And I think that's kind of what Vince saw with Bret. Bret was known as a tag team guy and a real good one. But Vince saw that Bret could be a single star, and of course he was. So that was a good call. But then when all the rumbling started and the guaranteed monies were flying around and all these exorbitant, and I don't want to say exorbitant like they didn't deserve it. That's not true. That's not even accurate, JR, you dumb bastard. But it's just a matter of, I think he was concerned, and it gets a bad look, like we're losing traction and we're losing a foothold, and things are changing too rapidly in a negative way. So I think keeping Bret was of great importance, and not just for the appearance of a guy leaving and going to the competition. I mean, let's face it, Conrad, Bret Hart was one of the greatest workers ever.
Yeah.
And he was in his prime.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to lose a guy like that, no matter the political surroundings. So I think Bret was a high priority. You know, I came there in '93, so I only knew Bret from television at that point. I never got around him because he was always in WWE, and I was never in WWE at that time. So our relationship grew as time went on, and to this very day, we're great friends, and we communicate from time to time. And you know, he knows I'm here to help him out if I can on some of his projects, and I do. And he's always been friendly to me and very complimentary of my work. You know, it's amazing what he remembers about matches I've called. You mentioned Sean Waltman. You know, Sean Waltman and Bret had a run or two and on TV, and that really helped make Sean Waltman's career. And I was lucky enough to be sitting in that chair at that point in time to broadcast it. So I have a lot of time for Bret, but I think Vince looked at it in two ways. I think first of all, probably the personal way. I can't lose Bret. You know, he was one of my staples. He's homegrown. He's home developed. But also the fact I just mentioned, he's a hell of a worker.
Yeah.
And you can't keep losing hell of a workers and think you're going to replace them easily. It just doesn't happen.
So we know ultimately he's going to land here with the WWF, and we're going to talk about that, and we're actually going to listen to some of that in-ring segment. But before we get going, I wanted to bring this up because, gosh, at this point, it's years ago. I had a conversation with Eric Bischoff on our sister podcast, 83 Weeks, and we talked about Bret Hart in WCW. But we also talked about this era in 1996, where it felt like Bret was maybe the hottest free agent in the history of wrestling at that point. And really, it felt like before that, maybe Brian Pillman was one of those. But now it was Bret's turn. And for years and years, it's been said that Bret had a big time offer from WCW and Vince was up against it. Vince couldn't match the money, but he did offer longevity.
Right.
And perhaps Bret was loyal and saw a 20-year opportunity with a guy he had been with for a long time.
Right.
Versus a quick cash grab from someone who he didn't have a lot of history with.
Correct.
And Eric says didn't happen. Never made him an offer.
Huh.
What do you make of that?
I'm surprised. And I'm not doubting Eric's word because he was there and I was not. So, but I find it hard to believe that that Bret didn't get an offer to at least let him smell some of that big money. You know, it may have been discussed in a roundabout way and not a direct offer. I don't know, Connie, but that surprises me, quite frankly.
Us too. You know, I had built the entire show around talking about the ins and outs of that contract because allegedly it was going to include some movie work because we know that Bret at the time had an interest in doing those type of opportunities. You know, he had done Lonesome Dove and a few other things. And I think the talk was perhaps he would get a hefty sum from the Turner side of things and do some TNT movies and also have the biggest wrestling contract at the time, I think, that anybody had, maybe outside of Hogan. But still, Eric drew a line in the sand, even though Dave Meltzer and a lot of other folks said, no, it definitely happened. I saw the contract. Eric doubled down and said, if you find that contract, I'll eat it. And all these years later, nobody has found it. Do you believe, and I realize I'm just dropping all this on you cold, but do you believe this becomes one of those wrestling lore things where it's, you know, it's just repeated often enough that becomes fact? Because even after Eric has maybe been the only voice saying it didn't happen because no one believed him and everyone said, yes, it definitely happened. No one produced the contract, which I found odd.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm just, like I said, I'm surprised that Eric said that, but I'm not doubting his word because, you know, like I said, he was there. I wasn't. And Eric's not a guy that likes to cover his ass. He'll tell you like it is.
Yeah.
And I appreciate with Eric. I appreciate that with him and respect him for that. because that's not a common trait with wrestling promoters, to speak your mind and to fall on your sword and be honest. So he was certainly that way, and since I've been dealing with him, and even when he came to work for us at WWE at the time. But it's surprising. It's a surprising development. I just got to believe that somewhere along the way, money's generally speaking, generally discussing income. Because let's be honest about it, it's all about cash and creative.
Of course.
And Eric's going to probably make sure that Bret has the same creative control that he had with some of his other guys, because they talk. Those guys talk, and you can bet your ass they were talking to Bret. Here's what the deal we got. Here's our deal. Creative, So, and then cash and creative. So I don't know how that could not have been a part of a conversation, but making a firm offer is a different ballgame. So, and that was a good get for those guys. And I just think that it comes down to a lot of these things. A lot of things come down to this, I should say. Communication.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, God dang. A lot of these issues that we talk about on this show could have been prevented if talents and the decision makers were communicating in an upfront and a sincere and genuine way. That's not always the case, as we know. So I don't know, man. I just think this poor communication causes a lot of these issues, which is bullshit. Because what happens is the almighty wrestling ego business gets interjected, and that becomes a catalyst. And what you're talking about is ego, and that's kind of what it was. Bret felt he had great worth. He felt like that. He should have been paid more, and I'm not disagreeing with that, quite frankly. He should have been the highest paid guy in WWE by far. He was the most valuable player of WWE at that time by far. So to me, it's not a hard decision. But also, I'm not looking at the books. I'm not looking at Vince's accounting and so forth and so on. But losing Bret would have been a big hit on the live events. And even though today live events are not a huge consequence, it seems like, because of the rights fees and so forth, and the promotions getting their money in a different source, Bret was always that staple that drew houses. He was big on the live event tours and sold tickets and made money for the company. So he was he offered a lot. And the other thing that people don't see, Conrad, and I'm a big proponent of this. I believe you should recruit athletes. I believe that you should treat talents like athletes, not entertainers. I believe that we should dress in locker rooms, not dressing rooms. I'm an old school bastard. I get it, folks. But Bret covered all those bases. And what he did in the locker room, I don't know of any talent that I ever worked with that had more respect from his peers in that locker room than Bret Hart. So he influenced a lot of young talents. He talked to them about work ethic and fundamental soundness and things like that. So he was invaluable in that era because he certainly was a believable and a very, trustworthy guy. So that's, and I don't know how you put a dollar price on that. And I don't know that WCW at that time had an abundance of individuals that would put the company or the other talents ahead of themselves. I think Bret Hart had that ability, and I think he did it on a regular basis.
We should also mention that there's a story brewing behind the scenes on this head-to-head battle of the WWF and WCW. The prior week on Raw, the show did a 1.78 rating. That's the lowest rating in the show's history at that point. And everyone points to the Raw from Europe in 97 as sort of the wake-up call for Vince Russo and the Attitude Era beginning. But coming off of a pay-per-view like we are here in 96, and we're coming off of Buried Alive, and having a record low rating, Vince has to be fired up and ready for a change. Do you remember Bret being, well, let's pause the Bret talk for a minute. Do you remember Vince being, I don't know, open to new ideas? Would that be fair to say?
Sure, absolutely. He was very open to new ideas. But the problems we were having had nothing to do with Bret Hart.
Right. Because he wasn't on the show.
Yeah, it's just nothing.
But as far as, people give credit to the Attitude Era as saying, well, this changed everything.
Right.
And a lot of people try to point to when did that change happen? But he's trying new things here. He's got Jim Ross turning heel, and he's got the fake Razor and Diesel, and he's never really acknowledged the competition like this. And even though we're not necessarily beating you over the head with the fact that WCW could have gotten Bret Hart, we are sort of celebrating, hey, we kept him. And that's acknowledged on TV. And it feels like Vince at this point, because a lot of people say these days, when they complain about creative, oh, it's for an audience of one. The idea being that it's just Vince doing what Vince wants to do every single week. But do you think this is the era where perhaps people could get Vince's ear a little easier than they could at any other time?
Yeah, he was accepting new thoughts, new ideas. He was listening to more people, and you're up to, you got to try new things to see what might get over.
Right.
And we just didn't have the right players on the field. The Attitude Era was an era that, we were challenged, especially in my area, talent relations, to sign more younger guys, sign more guys who are hungry, athletic, that wanted to be stars. Stone Cold's a great example of that. He was a journeyman. When he came there, he was going to be a journeyman heel, managed by Ted DiBiase. And then all of a sudden, through Steve's persona, he got over as a babyface. I remember one of the worst cussings he ever gave me was one night after Raw was over, and I went back into the locker room area, and there he sat looking down at the floor like he was looking for dimes. And I said, well, how's it feel to be a big baby face? Man, I got an FU and SOB, and, he was ripping my ass. I said, well, hold on a second. Because I knew what motivated Stone Cold.
Yeah.
Money. I said, the money you can make simply on merch is astonishing. You'll make more money on merch than you've ever made with a wrestling contract. And he raised his head up off the floor and looked at me, and he was searching for more info. I said, you're going to have quarters of income where you're going to make seven figures. And you and I both know seven figures is $1 million. That's a lot of T-shirts, you might say. But your audience is growing by leaps and bounds. Every week there's more posters. Every week, that's a great market research. The promoters should look at the signs in the audience. I love it when the AEW fans bring signs. It tells us what's on their mind, what they're thinking, what has their interest at that point in time.
Right.
So he got over his hard-on for being a babyface and started accepting the role, because becoming a babyface might not have been his preference. He wanted to be an old-school heel. I said, your shelf life will be longer as this character babyface. That's what he was. He wasn't Ricky Steamboat, Ricky Morton kind of a babyface. He was a character babyface that didn't change his work style, didn't change his holds, his mannerisms, his sequencing or nothing. He just was a rough ass character babyface. And I told him, I said, you're kind of like Cowboy was back in that era. Cowboy was not going to take a lot of bumps.
Right.
But he was going to let you run into his fist as often as you wanted to until it was time to go home. And people loved it. They lived vicariously through that. So he started coming around in that regard. But, and we all knew that somewhere down the road, at some point, Stone Cold versus Bret Hart was money. And it was money. WrestleMania 13 was a hell of a match those dudes had. So it was a double turn, and those are hard to pull off. I've been a part of many successful ones. So, I think that we were on the cusp of doing a lot of things, but we needed Bret to make sure it all worked, because he added stability and he added believability to the process that we're trying to achieve. So it was a interesting time, to say the least. And this episode of Raw is really compelling from the standpoint that, It opened the door for a lot of things. It's going to be it's a different day, different era, different priorities. And looking back on it is a whole lot more exciting now than it was then, because then we didn't know where we were going.
Right.
We didn't know, is this going to work? You know, and nobody created the attitude era. Nobody said, well, let's do this. Let's do a thing called, attitude era. Shit, nobody knew what that was. It was, you know, we wanted to get new talents involved. They were hungry. They were looking for an opportunity, and nobody was hungrier than Stone Cold. And I know this is not a Stone Cold show, but that was kind of the mindset of what we were trying to do. Give guys a chance that had been working a long time. They were good hands in the ring. They were pro wrestlers and knew what they were doing. And that included, at the top of the very list, was Bret Hart. Bret Hart was where it all started. And the trickle down from Bret was prominent and significant, to say the least.
Well, to be clear, it kind of is a Stone Cold episode, because he's one of the opponents that Bret's looking forward to working with the most. And of course, we know it'll be Bret's first opponent. But before we press play, I want to ask a couple more questions, one specifically about Bret Hart. I'm not exactly sure when the timeline happened, but I know in 1996 is when we see J.J. Dillon leave and go to WCW. And I believe that happened the month prior in September. So I am curious, since you're now going to be trying to tackle some of the talent relations stuff. I know Bruce had a cup of coffee in that seat, I believe.
Right, he did.
But were you involved in any of the Bret Hart negotiation?
No, and you know that was a common denominator through the years with Vince. He took ownership of certain talents.
Got it.
When we brought in, returned Hogan, you know, I had no relationship with Hogan, and unfortunately, I still don't have one to this very day. I respect him, and I don't dislike him. I just never got close to him. But Vince had been close to him, and they had been, you know, closer to 19 years to 20, as McGranny would say. But no, I didn't have. That was all Vince. Some of those talents, like Warrior and Bret, of course. The one that he let go of because I got more results than Vince did was Austin.
Right.
Austin became my guy. And, you know, I did everything I could for Steve to win and for the company to win. For the company to win with Austin, make sure his contract is solid and he's happy, and make sure he's getting paid well based on what he's earning and what he's selling. Again, the house show business was a huge component to what we were doing, and it added to the bottom line of these guys' income. But Vince was Bret was Vince's guy, and Vince wanted to handle Bret himself. And I think that was a smart move, quite frankly. I could back it up, and I could, you know, reinforce Vince's theories and his feelings and so forth to Bret when it was called upon. But Vince wanted to make sure he took care of Bret, and I said, have at it. Because that gave us, you know, that helped me out a lot. That helped me get a deal done. Basically because Vince was ramrodding it. And I think that made Bret feel good, that he was being attended to by the top guy and not a ham and egg from Oklahoma.
Talk to me about Mr. Perfect. He's going to be a big part of this show. He's been promoted pretty heavily. This is essentially the return of Mr. Perfect to Monday Night Raw. And of course, the return of Bret Hart as well. But we know that, well, Perfect's not long for this world. He's eventually going to walk out and go do the WCW thing and find himself becoming an in-ring competitor again. But at this point, he's been a pretty critical part of what you guys have been doing storyline wise with Mark Miro and Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and of course the Intercontinental Championship. And it felt like Mr. Perfect was going to be a good guy, as weird as that may sound, and help out Mark Miro. And of course, on this episode, we find out maybe not so much, but it doesn't work out for Mr. Perfect here. Were you involved on a talent relations side in Mr. Perfect leaving?
Yeah, well, you know, it had to be, because see, that was a different mindset, a different synergy. You see Vince a lot coming in. You might not see as much of him going out.
Right.
And, but Kurt and I developed a good friendship over the whole deal. We even were broadcast partners, which I thought he was going to be. He reminds me in his broadcast work, Connie, of CM Punk in the recent days. He's a natural. Punk is a natural at doing commentary. There's no doubt in my mind. And one of my goals somewhere down the road would be to do a show with a regular basis with CM Punk. I think we could be terrific together because I know how he thinks and how he works. Now you feed him things, and I'm the point guard. I got to get him the ball, and that's what I would like to try to do at some point in time. And I'm not knocking working with Tony or Excalibur, even though that's what it's going to be made to be. Oh, Ross didn't want to work with Schiavone and Excalibur. I never said that, you dumb fucks. Please, don't be that stupid. They assume too many things. But I knew that Kurt was having health problems. And when a wrestler's back goes bad, it is a terrible thing.
Yeah.
Because think of how many things that you do in a match that end with a flat back bump. Body slams, clotheslines, drop kicks. You got to fall somewhere. You got to fall some way. And 9 times out of 10, it seems like it's on your back. So he was having issues with his back and icing it up after every time he wrestled. He just was not in physically where he wanted to be. He wanted to be good. Because look, when Kurt Hennig was healthy, he was one hell of a hand. There's just no doubt about it. He was one hell of a hand. He looked great. His facials were priceless. He could cut a promo. He could work babyface. He could work heel. I know he wanted to work heel more than babyface. It was just fun for him, much like the motivation for Stone Cold to be a heel in the beginning, because he perceived it to be more fun. But Kurt was just coming at the end of his run. His internal clock, Conrad, was ticking, and he knew it was. So what are you going to do? You're going to chase the money.
Yeah.
I'm going to run after this last significant payday, get a few years guaranteed, and then go from there. So it's like if Kurt was around today, you mentioned that I was at the New York City Comic Con last week, and can you imagine how many of those Kurt could have made?
Oh, huge.
He'd been booked every week. Every time they turn the lights on, you'd see Mr. Perfect hanging around.
Yeah.
He'd do well. So I was involved just to get on the exit, but it wasn't a negative interaction. It was simply, he wanted to go. He wanted out. That's how I looked at it, and he got a good money offered him. I don't know what it was. I didn't ask him. So, but he knew that he was on his last legs because his back, and off we went. CM Punk and I made a little parody of that. And indirectly the other day when we talked about the Lloyds of London thing on television.
Yeah, people love that.
So it's kind of fun, but it's times are changing, man. Changing of the guard. We got to get some new blood.
So you're in the middle of this losing streak here for these ratings wars. And don't tell Eric I told you this, but your show's probably the better of the two at this point. I mean, adding Bret Hart to the mix is going to be something that's going to be a big deal for anybody, but still, I think sometimes fans get caught up in the ratings head to head without understanding there is other competition. As we mentioned here, you've got both NFL football and the World Series. October is a tough time,
right,
in the wrestling business when you've got playoff baseball and Monday Night Football and another show. Woof, that's a lot of competition.
A lot of competition for the eyes of the TV viewer, no doubt about it. Well, they were providing an alternative. They were providing a different view, and they had acquired a lot of stars with name identity that were perceived as big timers because of WWE television. Because those are the guys that Eric put the company, seemingly to me. Now I might be wrong. Seemingly on his back were guys like Hall and Nash, and of course then Hogan comes in, and then does it really matter? Does it really matter who's left or who you're featuring? Hogan, Hall, and Nash are going to elevate anyone that they touch in that era, and I thought they were used very wisely. I thought they killed their own deal when they started adding everybody and their sister to the NWO. I thought that was a mistake. But that's just me talking. Hell, I don't know. It might not have been a mistake in Eric's mind. But nonetheless, they had some magic dust kind of spread on this thing. Man, they had stars that people wanted to follow and talk about and see what was next. Because you can't tell me that you're going to watch Hogan and Hall and Nash because of the great 5-star matches, whatever that means, on TV. Because the number one, they're not going to wrestle at house shows. I don't know how many house shows that trio made, but I would suggest it'd be minimal. And so I think that, you know, they captivated the attention of the audience. And a lot of that was because they were allowed to say and do and maintain their heat, especially when Hogan turned heel. It was a big deal. But then again, there's where the wrestling business kind of had a big turn, because they were heels. They were villains, but they were cool heels. And that's not a good formula. Sorry. I don't want to piss anybody off. JR's knocking Eric and or the WCW. I'm not. I just philosophically believe that if you're going to be a true villain and you're going to motivate people to leave their homes, jump in their car with their snotty-nosed kids and find a parking place at the venue and then pay significant monies for tickets and a hamburger or a hot dog and a Coke or something, that you got to be a villain. I got to want to see you get your ass whipped. And I'm not so sure that's what was always the case, especially with the NWO, because they were too cool to boo and to hate. There was no hate there. They were attractions, and they were significant attractions, but they were not true heels.
You know, we were talking about Hall and Nash there. I wanted to circle back to something you said earlier about Bret Hart's contract. You said he deserved to be the highest paid performer on the roster.
I think so.
When we talk about Hall and Nash in this era, oftentimes a phrase comes up that you and I have never discussed. I want to get your take on it. What do you think of the famed favored nations clause, where if you have a contract that's of pretty significant value and then someone comes along and joins the team, but they're making more money, well, you get bumped up to whatever they're making at the time. What do you make of that?
I'm not a big fan of it, Conrad. If I was the talent that had a favored nations clause in my contract, I probably would be a much larger fan than I currently am. But all in all, it was a smart move, I guess, by Barry Bloom, who's also my agent now. I don't have a favored nations. I don't know that, I'm not bitching about it. It was a pretty good rabbit to pull out of his hat on that deal. And because the value of Hall and Nash and those fellas, the favored nations thing seemed to be, let's don't lose these guys over this, because we can do this if we need to. All you got to do is make sure you keep the favored nation numbers within reason for your payroll and your budget. But I'm not a big fan of it, quite frankly. I'm a fan of you earning your raises and your bonuses on your merits and not on the ability for someone to negotiate a better deal with another talent. That's just me. But if you got one, then it's a pretty cool deal, because you got a chance to make more money just because somebody else has got a good agent who's negotiating better deals. So I'm not a big fan of it.
One last thing before we do our countdown. By the way, we're watching, I guess I should list the season number. I hate that they do it this way, but it's season 4, episode 41 of Monday Night Raw, October 21st, 1996. We're going to give you a countdown momentarily. So fire up Peacock. Make sure you've got yours muted, and JR and I will give you some alternate commentary on season 4, episode 41 of Monday Night Raw. It's October 21st, 1996. Buried Alive, was what it was, but we also see a couple interesting things I want to mention here, because that's the pay-per-view that happens right before this Monday Night Raw. Terry Gordy debuts as the Executioner. And I know that you were a big fan of all things Doc and Gordy once upon a time on the WCW side of things. And
right.
I know you love their stuff over in Japan.
Right.
But it's been often said that Terry Gordy here perhaps got a shot as a favor to Doc Hendricks, a.k.a. his old pal, Michael P.S. Hayes. And frankly, he just wasn't the same Terry Gordy. Do you have the same opinion?
Yeah. Michael was a catalyst in trying to get Terry work. But after Terry had that drug overdose, I think it was on a plane ride, or after plane rides from hell type thing. He never was the same. He's a step off, and he had great timing when he was healthy, and one of the most athletic heavyweights I've ever seen. He was 300 pounds. You know, he was a star at 16 or 17 years old. He was a freak of nature. He just had that it thing. He had it charisma. He had it timing, it believability, and everybody, including the Cowboys, thought, and Ernie Ladd was another one that thought that, you know, Gordy is the star of the Freebirds, and Michael talking and Gordy working. Then you throw a little Buddy Roberts in there, Buddy Jack, and you know, it's money. But Michael wanted to give him a chance, and I think Bruce probably was on the same page. We all had an affinity for Terry. Knew he'd made some mistakes, but if we could find that spark again, what we were looking for is the same thing I was looking for with Mick Foley, an opponent for the Undertaker. So Terry Gordy was brought in, led by Michael Hayes' campaigning, and others of us that agreed with that and went to Vince. Vince didn't have any pushback on it because, you know, it was an experiment. What does he have left? Well, we found out he didn't have much left. God bless him. He just didn't. And we wanted him to have a lot left. He'd have made himself a lot of money working with the Undertaker. And if Terry Gordy had been the old Terry Gordy, his matches with the Undertaker would have been legendary by now. They were the match that people were talking about, much like we're talking about somewhere down the road to WrestleMania 13 with Bret and Austin. People still talk about that match for the artistry of it, and Terry Gordy could do the same thing when he was right. But mentally, it just wasn't there anymore. He just, that one last OD took its toll seriously on him. But we were all for it in the beginning, Conrad, and I'm not going to lie about that. It's just one of those experiments that you hope will work, but it unfortunately did not.
What can you share with us about the whole heel persona that they're at least trying with you here? At Buried Alive, your microphone doesn't work, so you throw your headset at Vince McMahon and storm off. It's an interesting moment because, you know, we've been trying you as sort of the voice of Razor and Diesel, and you've told us before the fun story of you and Briscoe riding together, and you're trying to get that promo down. I'm sure part of you likes the idea that, hey, they're trying something new and I'm being challenged a little bit. But what do you think about sort of blurring the lines of reality, even as the broadcaster, where you throw the microphone and storm off? Is that interesting to you, or is this not really your deal?
It never was really my deal, but I just went back to my roots, and where you are, it's incumbent upon you to do what you're asked to do, told to do, signed to do, whatever. I was always been a team player, and I'm always going to be a team player because that's how I was brought into the business. So I didn't feel comfortable doing it because I didn't. And one of the reasons that, Conrad, was not just my massive ego, was the fact I didn't think I was very good at it.
Right.
I didn't think that was the best use of my skill set. But, you know, and I guess even back all the way back then, Vince had the idea that I was not going to be a long-term broadcaster because of my Southern drawl and my look and so forth. And then along comes a couple of bouts of Bell's palsy, and, you know, it makes it even more challenging for him because he's a looks guy, and I'm not a looks person, as you can tell by looking at your screen right now. So I wasn't real comfortable with it. I didn't refuse to do it. I didn't negotiate not to do it. I just, what do you want me to do? Give me some point, give me some direction. And so that's kind of where we were on that deal. But it was one of those ideas where we recognized WCW too much through that vehicle.
Yep.
And I didn't think that was smart. And, but I was willing to see where it was going to go. And, you know, and we did that. So, but I was never real comfortable with it because, again, I didn't think I was very good at it. Not because I didn't want to do it. My ego was too big. I just think I didn't, what do I have to add to this equation? I'm not going to go out in the ring and take bumps. I'm going to be a manager. So, you know, the hardest thing for me to do is to knock Monsoon.
Right.
And I did a promo where I knocked Gorilla, and I love Gorilla like a father. And I of course, addressed that with him, and he just shook his head. He shook his head about the whole damn creative. And he said, "Don't worry about me, kid. We're all right. Just do what you got to do." And I did. I did what I had to do.
So let's jump into it. Let's fire up the Peacock Network here. Season 4, episode 41. I'm at all zeros here. It's October 21st, 1996. I'm going to give you a quick countdown, and then when I say play, we'll press play. I'll start with 3 and go 3, 2, 1, play, and then we'll go. So, Jim, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1, play.
The World Wrestling Federation, for over 50 years, the revolutionary force in sports entertainment.
The images of Bret Hart's departure at WrestleMania 12 are still burned in our memories. For 6 months, the Hitman has carried the pain of leaving behind his title, his fans, and his legacy. Ever since then, rumors have persisted about his future, and tonight, we all very anxiously await what he has to say.
Perfection is the goal of every superstar, but only one man has lived it. Tonight, the celebrated return of one of the most revered athletes in the history of the World Wrestling Federation. The most perfect intercontinental champion of all time returns to teach a lesson in humility to a new generation snob.
Two great champions return tonight on Monday Night Raw.
Rah. Go down the drain, old buddy.
I love the old intros here. This is fun, man.
It's a nice setup for the episode. I think more shows should do that.
I totally agree. Sort of reset, give you a heads up where we are, what's going on, the context, if you will. And yeah, Vince McMahon, let's take a listen.
On his way to Madison Square Garden at the Survivor Series to attempt to take away the World Wrestling Federation Championship.
So we know now we've got Survivor Series as our next pay-per-view. It's in our sights. Sid has just won a #1 contender matchup at the pay-per-view, so he is now in line to get a title shot. And of course, famously, as everyone knows the story, the plan was going to be Vader and Shawn doing that trilogy: SummerSlam, Survivor Series, and Royal Rumble. Sid gets the spot, and honestly, Sid did pretty damn well in that role, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. You know, when Sid started fist bumping fans on the way to the ring, you saw the connection at that point. For some reason, and I don't say that incredulously, but for whatever reasons they may have, the fans they migrated to Sid.
He's believable.
Yeah, and he looks great. He's what they wish they looked like.
Yeah.
You know, if you live vicariously through a lot of the wrestlers, which a lot of fans have done, including myself as a kid, you know, and here he steps over the top rope, a la Andre. Much easier than Andre used to do it, quite frankly. But Sid was an attraction. Sid Vicious was not an everyday wrestler. He was not an everyday wrestler. He was an attraction. There's our old friend Owen. So glad AEW is doing some stuff with Owen's family, his widow Martha. And I see he just got a new haircut there. He probably got some fan who had a barber's license to cut it for free.
Clarence Mason is in tow here. Of course, Clarence Mason is replacing Jim Cornette as Owen Hart's manager here. As you see him sporting one of the tag titles. And
good luck with that. Good luck with that, Conrad. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Clarence Mason, named after Clarence Darrow and Perry Mason, two well-known barristers.
And the whole Owen Hart issue has become a hot issue online with fans, but I for one, am just glad that Owen's family now has some connection to wrestling. It just feels like for so long it was disjointed, and now the idea that whether it's with WWE or AEW, wrestling fans just want to celebrate the memory of Owen Hart. And I'm glad that now there's an opportunity to do that.
Me too. Me too. And it's all intended in the best of ways. It'll be done in a classy way, like that man Owen Hart is. Well, look at the size difference.
What'd you think of the old red, white, and blue setup here? I mean, this is sort of classic WWF, the blue turnbuckles, the red, white, and blue ropes, the blue ring skirts, the light canvas. This was really sort of the hallmark of the WWF for a long time. And we know that's all going to change not too long after this with the Attitude Era, and it's going to go more red and black. Did you think this was just more of the 80s look?
Yeah. Yeah. More of the 80s. Raw got its own look.
Yeah.
And, I think that was smart marketing, quite frankly. The red and black became the team colors. I used to have those red and black Nikes, those Jordan, where the hell they were. I don't know how you come across them. But when we went black and red, those shoes, I saw those shoes in the store. So then I need to wear these on TV because I get a lot of shots of my feet on television, you know.
Whenever somebody breaks a cinder block over your head or shoves your head in another man's ass, all that type of stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Got to be fashionable when you're getting humiliated.
Meltzer is not a fan of Sid. He would write, Sid beat Owen by DQ when Smith interfered and Michaels made the save, and Sid and Michaels shook hands. Sid has gotten so bad it's almost amazing. He's always been bad, but compared to what he is now, he used to be like Flair in his prime. Well, I don't know about all that, but it is interesting that, you know, it certainly feels like Meltzer has his favorites, but that doesn't always relate to what the crowd in the seats is saying. I mean, he got a huge ovation here and a big reaction from fans. And we see Davey Boy running down now, but still maybe Meltzer not so sold on his in-ring ability. Do you think, in your opinion, that Sid was sort of all sizzle, very little steak?
Not all sizzle, but I think that he was an attraction. Attractions are to be seen seldomly and kept in their lane. And I'm in a commercial break.
Yeah.
But I don't think that he was never going to be a Funk or a Briscoe. He was an attraction. He's like, I tried to explain to the writers that, you know, he's like Vader. He's like Vince's dad booked Andre. The less you see them, the better off you are. And here we are back in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I haven't been to Fort Wayne since that time, I don't think. But look how Owen breaks down the big guy. He keeps Sid out of trouble, doesn't let Sid look bad, takes care of his opponent, and a smart strategy to try to destroy the vertical base, get the 6'9" guy off his feet, use the ring post, which is unforgiving and always wins, as a weapon.
We just saw a promo for the old Superstar Hotline. And, of course, the Ross Report was featured there, and you were trying to sell why Psycho Sid will be the next WWF champion. We've talked a little bit before about the WCW hotline. What can you tell us about the WWF hotline? Did you have any quote unquote supervision, or was that just your baby to run, or what went into the WWF hotline?
Well, it was my baby to run my day. You know, it was my baby to do my particular report. I didn't have any creative issues or control, influence. And Davey Boy's getting his cheap shot in while baby Earl Hebner is back his turn. And look at Owen direct traffic there. He went right around, nice subtlety, fancy to look at. He went when it was time to go past the referee. Owen went past the referee because the damage had allegedly already been done. So I didn't have any, back to the hotline. I did my day. You know, I thought that would be a great source of income going forward, but I never made a dime off the hotline. No extra money. Now I know when Mean Gene went to WCW, he got a piece of the action.
Yes, he did.
And did real well with it, which I was happy to hear. I didn't have that luck. It's funny to see a smaller man use a headbutt.
I was going to say the same thing. Do you have I'm not saying this to be funny because I often do this as a funny haha, but do you have a favorite Sid match? Do you remember there being a time in this era of Sid, where he's going to be the WWF champion and heck, even main event the next WrestleMania for you guys. Do you remember there being one match where you're like, man, that's probably as good as we're going to have a match?
It seemed to be when he won the title
with Shawn at Survivor Series. I agree.
Yeah. I think that to me was, the crescendo for Sid of matches that I can recall off the top of my head. And let's also be honest. He was in there with one of the best ever.
Yep.
And it was a long-term storyline that was going to cultivate in the Alamo Dome in Shawn's hometown. So all the pieces were already set in place. And I think that was probably Sid's best night was that night. Of course, it was at the Garden. So that always added a little, the Garden crowd and the arena always added some value.
Talk to me about Sid's reputation amongst the boys. You know, we know fans love him, and we also know that fans have heard a lot about his unreliability. We'll talk about that in a minute. But as far as the other opponents, a guy like Owen, a guy like Shawn, did they like Sid as an opponent? Obviously, it's a different style match for them, but that whole David versus Goliath thing, they probably enjoyed, huh?
Yeah, Sid was predictable. He didn't have a nice choke slam. He did not have a wide-ranging array of wrestling maneuvers that he perfected. He was one-dimensional, but in a good way. And you notice the fans standing on their feet now because Sid is getting toward the end, and there's the Bulldog interfering, which will cause the disqualification. But you knew what you're getting with Sid. And he was just it worked out pretty well. There's Shawn Michaels, street shoes on, slipping, sliding around.
Let's track a little bit. Let's listen.
Oh! Look at this! Shawn Michaels all over the British Bulldog.
Yeah.
Bulldog goes for the ride.
John can't keep his watch on.
I saw that. He's
got to wear that. He's got to wear that Ric Flair Rolex, you know. Be as much of the nature boy as he can be.
Yeah, when he was throwing those punches, you could tell he was like spreading his fist out, like, "Ooh, I don't want this thing to fly off in the crowd." So there you have it. The storyline starts as Psycho Sid being a good guy, you know,
shaking hands,
wrestling a heel, and he's shaking hands with the top baby face and the champ, and we know that's not going to last long. Let's track a little bit as they're conversating.
Doing right now. Look at this. I knew Sid was playing with a full deck, but Shawn Michaels must be a couple of beers short of a six-pack too to even come out here and help the man who's going to try to take his title from him. I think they're trying to talk things out here, but I'm not so sure that there is not a difference of opinion. All right. It's all about the WWE.
That means Vince is ready, and he said, "All right, it's ready to go to the next piece of business."
I like that you speak Vince. You know when he's a little annoyed and ready to move on.
Absolutely. Nobody speaks Vince better than old Brucey, though.
So we see some still photos from the Buried Alive show. And I like when you guys wouldn't show video clips because you're still trying to sell the Tuesday replay for the pay-per-view. Yeah. So you give these credit for the photos to the WWF magazine, but in reality, they're just screen grabs.
Hey, did you hear the mention of on AEW the night of Bruce?
I did. Old MJF saying he had Brucey on speed dial.
That shocked me.
It's a good little line, I guess.
I didn't have any idea they were going to do it. That was MJF going into business with he and Tony Khan. And you kind of give MJF this leeway as we're seeing these stills of the Buried Alive match. And I, knowing Tony Khan and MJF as I do, I think it's all a part of a storyline. I don't think it was just indiscriminate. I don't think they just threw it out there to get a pop. I think there's something to it in the back end. We'll just have to wait and see.
We see there the executioner broke the shovel over the head of the Undertaker. And as we know, even though it looked like Mankind had lost the match and the Undertaker had won, the executioner comes out, breaks that shovel over the Undertaker. Down goes Taker. And
you Terry Gordy looked good too, Conrad. It's just a tone and definition in his upper body. And that's a good angle. That's a good situation to shoot an angle to marry Undertaker and the Executioner. But we just couldn't play it out. We just couldn't couldn't get there.
And then you see the lightning strike the grave here. And of course we get that hand bursting through. And by the way, the WWE warehouse still has that tombstone that we're taking a look at there, as we see now the Smoking Gun's coming to the ring. Boy, has Billy Gunn found the Fountain of Youth or what?
I think he has, man. I ask him that every week. Oh, look who's there.
Let's take a listen here.
Oh, yeah, me too. Did you work on that overnight?
No, I think you're not sitting on the mic cord today.
Oh, there's nothing there.
Okay.
You fire that audio man, you should fire him. I'll fire him for you.
What is Bret Hart going to say? You said you were going to deliver him. What's Bret Hart going to say?
Well, you'll find out, because I just got through talking to Bret Hart. He's here in Fort Wayne, and, well, you'll be most interested, I think, to hear what he's got to say.
I think everyone is going to be most interested. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen, tag team action. We've got the Smoking Guns, former tag team champions, against the Godwin family, former tag team champions as well.
So now we've got the Cowboys and the Hog Farmers.
Yeah.
This is Vince McMahon. This is in his wheelhouse, boy.
He loves it. He loves it. Stereotype could be. You know, the Godwin's got to carry a pig.
Each. One each, and Hillbilly Jim.
I remember when
and
we
the
did
slot bucket.
the pig thing, and Owen turned all the pigs loose in Vince's office where he got to work. You hear that story?
Oh yeah.
That's a good one.
I want to mention too, this is a pretty monumental Raw for a lot of reasons, not just because of the Bret Hart thing, which we're going to listen to shortly. And, of course we're going to get into the Mr. Perfect stuff as well, but this is the first time that Raw is live on TSN. And of course that's the station in Canada that carries the show. And for a long time, especially when you look at the next year of the WWF, boy, Canada is such a big part of what you guys are doing. And it feels like, hey, if houses are down here in America domestically, well, let's just go across the border, because Canada at that point is almost like a wrestling crazed country.
Yeah.
And you've now got this show live on TSN. That's a big deal for the company, is it not?
Yeah, it is. You notice there, Hillbilly Jim stepping over the top rope. If Sid's going to be your next champion, and Sid's the number one contender, I would not have had Hillbilly step over the top rope.
Well, first of all, he really couldn't do it without balancing. I mean, it's a teeter-totter deal.
Yeah. You don't want to get your yam bag hung on those top ropes, I can promise you.
I can't imagine that feels good.
Not that I've ever done that, but I have had a yam bag issue on the second rope, and it's not fun.
Well, Jim, you brought it up. Let's hear about that yam bag.
Yeah. Well, every man's got one.
Well, yours specifically, grinding on the ropes. How did this happen? Tell us about your yam bag incident.
Well, I got in the ring and I was stepping between the second and third rope, and there was a heel there, and so all he did was reach down and pull a rope up like a fiddle string, and it hit me about 3 times before I could get my fat ass off of it. It's not funny. It's not funny, Conrad. The misery of others should not be the pleasure of yours. This is I don't know how many times these guys work together.
Too many?
It had to be in the hundreds. You know, Phineas is one of the top chefs in Florida right now.
I heard that.
Yeah, he's really good, legit. And Bart Gunn is an electrician, also in Florida. Good guy. He don't like me much because of Brawford all, as if I had a damn thing to do with it. I didn't create it. But boy, he's a stud now. And then Billy's as a coach down at AEW, and his 2 sons are trying to make their way up the ladder. As we go to the real quick break here. Now we're right back. And we're still in Fort Wayne, Conrad, by the way. That's very marketable to all the lovely folks in Fort Wayne. But old Phineas has done well for himself. He's a character. He's lucky he made it through the Attitude Era. What a likable, funny guy.
Yeah, Naked Midian. What a gimmick that was.
Good God. You know, Billy Gunn was very underrated. When when the Smoking Guns broke up, Conrad, and Billy went another direction with Road Dogg, believe it or not, I wasn't sure that was going to work.
I think a lot of people felt like, because you originally, this gets glossed over, but when they break up, you try him as Rockabilly.
Yeah.
Put him with Honky Tonk Man, which is akin to the kiss of death. But somehow, some way, he has the best yet to come with the whole New Age Outlaws deal.
Right.
And then from there, you would try to break him off into a single star once again, and he wins the King of the Ring. The Rock just murdered him forever and ever, amen, as a singles competitor on live TV with a promo. And that was it, man. It's kind of a shame because he was such a big part of tag team wrestling for the company here.
Yeah.
Multiple time champion with the Smoking Guns, arguably the New Age Outlaws, one of the top acts in wrestling at the time. I mean, the whole crowd knew their whole rap word for word. I mean, there are different levels of quote unquote over. And I know the old term was a road warrior pop, but man, the New Age Outlaws, they were right up there, weren't they?
Yeah, they were a great act. They did really well. And it opened the door for Road Dogg. So we got two big wins out of this situation, and I got a main event level attraction from these two dudes who could both work. There's not anybody on the roster that Road Dogg and Billy could not have a great match with. That's the slop drop, Conrad, if you're wondering at home. It's like the Scorpion Death Drop, only a different name.
Really?
One of my, I don't want to say it's a pet peeve, but goddamn fans are so wrapped up over names of holds.
Yeah.
What if I'd have been on TV and I said, when Sting did his last Scorpion Death Drop, oh my God, it's the slop drop. The internet would have blown up. It's been fuzzy. The
irony, man, of Vince McMahon, as we see, there's some problems here with the Bart and Billy situation. Oh, we're going to announce the Hall of Fame. Let's. I like that. You know, this is really the first time that you guys are bringing back the Hall of Fame. Like, oh, I see Mr. Perfect doing squats. Oh, and Hunter Hearst Helmsley took him out. Let's listen.
Look what he did! Helmsley, I can't believe this!
So, of course, we know Hunter was supposed to be involved in this Mr. Perfect thing. Mr. Perfect warming up in the back. And, of course, there's going to be a plan, damn it. But I like that you guys were bringing back the Hall of Fame.
I did too. I think it's great.
We just saw a billboard there in town where locally on the billboard, what's being promoted is the two superstars are Bret Hart and Sonny. Now we've got a promo here.
Boom Tour is exploding with non-stop action and excitement as it sets to blow the roof off an arena near you.
Tomorrow night, we make our way to the Cincinnati Gardens. Wednesday, we visit Evansville Roberts Municipal Stadium. Thursday,
see how important house shows were?
Dude, huge. I mean, that's big time stuff right there when you're using your valuable TV time. And this is really what wrestling was about. I mean, for years and years and years, you used your television almost as like an infomercial to get you to buy tickets.
Correct.
And of course, we realize the industry's changed and entertainment's changed. And It's less about these live events and more about the licensing fee. So here's a clip from Livewire.
Like some jabroni and show half of a match. We went down to the basement, the famous Stu Hart basement, and I whipped his for 30 minutes. Put the sharpshooter on him for 10 minutes. Then Stu came down. Steve, let go of Bret. So I beat Stu's ass.
All right, Stone Cold continuing to challenge Bret the Hitman Hart. What is that answer? And of course, Farouk on Livewire, the injured Farouk, I might say, on Livewire. This coming Saturday morning.
The best there is.
Here we go.
The best there was.
Don't walk in my lines, Vince. God damn it.
Bret the Hitman Hart.
Nice little pop at Fort Wayne, Indiana, by the way.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. I mean, obviously, you would wish under different circumstances that you had a big market for this. Maybe not Fort Wayne, Indiana. I know, no disrespect to them, but you wish you were in a Chicago or a New York City or something like that.
Yeah, just didn't work out that way, Connie. And getting Bret to commit to coming back, you don't have a lot of options. And he strike while the iron's hot, as they say down there in Alabama.
Isn't it interesting too? He's out here, and he's going to produce a sheet of paper in his back pocket, but he's out here sans leather jacket, and it feels like most of the time when we saw Bret Hart, we would see Bret Hart in that leather jacket.
Yeah, it was different. I don't know the reason for that. I'm sure he had it with him. Maybe just one of those nights he decided to go to plan B as far as the attire is concerned.
It makes me think maybe it's more, hey, we're trying to show that, hey, this is real.
I think I did an action figure of that coat on.
Let's take a listen and see what he says in the interview. We're going to track the whole thing.
Bret, you have a lot to say. We're all wondering if Bret Hart's going to retire. Bret Hart going to come back and answer the challenge of Stone Cold Steve Austin? Are you going to take a front office position? Are you going to make movies? Please tell us what's in the future for Bret the Hitman Hart. And by the way, welcome back.
Well, I missed everybody. I just want to say that for the past couple of weeks, or maybe a little more, I've had to deal with a lot of things. And well, for one, there was a certain rival wrestling organization that all I could say is they made me a great offer, and they dealt with me with integrity, nothing but an honorable fashion. And I can't say anything bad about anything that they, how they represented themselves or me. And I was faced with this incredibly tough dilemma that if I decide to go back to wrestling, whether I should in fact come back to the WWF or find new adventures somewhere else.
Can't believe this is happening.
It was not that long ago that I said, these are my words, I think, that I'm not greedy for money. I'm greedy for respect. And until you actually have to step into my shoes and make that kind of a decision, when you get offered a great offer and you have to decide which one you're going to take. And I've done a lot of soul searching. You know, nobody has any idea how much soul searching I've done over this. But when it comes right down to it, to everything I've ever done and everything I ever plan on ever doing, I owe it all to my WWF fans. And I won't be going anywhere. The WWF, well, I'll be with the WWF forever.
Whoa.
I want to address.
That got you, didn't it?
Yeah, that's funny.
People wonder if I left because maybe I'm a sore loser. Maybe I am.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Shawn Michaels, the World Wrestling Federation champion. I want to make something very clear because it might not have seemed like it at the time. But Shawn Michaels beat me fair and square right in the middle of the ring, and there's no excuses for it. I might not be real thrilled about it, but I knew when I climbed back through the ropes after that 60-minute match, I knew what was at stake, and I lost, and I have no excuse for it. You know, I consider Shawn Michaels my opponent, not my enemy. But Shawn Michaels, there's just something about you that really bugs me.
Something about you that bugs me.
Shawn Michaels, you might be a little younger than I am. Might be a little more, you might even be a little more popular. Well, there's people out there that might think that Shawn Michaels is even a little bit cuter than I am. Shawn Michaels is a great wrestler, and he's done a great job as champion.
Look at my head of hair, Conrad. Isn't that wonderful?
But there's two things that Shawn Michaels will never, ever be. He will never, ever be as tough as me.
All due respect.
And he will never, ever be as smart as me.
Not so certain I would concur with.
I think Richard Nixon said it best.
And again, it may be true.
You learn from defeat, and you come back and you beat him the next time. Which is why I've decided to accept the challenge of the best wrestler in the WWF today. And in the Survivor Series, I will face Stone Cold Steve Austin.
As T.L. Hopper looks on, Tony Anthony.
I might be a little rusty, and maybe I won't be. But Steve Austin, I want you to know one thing. Madison Square Garden, it's not a church, but it's holy ground. And Steve Austin, Stone Cold, we'll see who kicks whose ass.
Crowd seems happy, Connie.
It's just sickening, McMahon.
It's overwhelming. It's what it is.
Since I've been off, I've had a chance to really think about a lot of things. And I owe everything I got to my fans all around the world. I got the most incredible fans all over the world, from Germany to the United States, Canada. It's an incredible honor and a privilege to have fans like that. And it's something I take quite seriously about being a role model. And I think that the one thing that's been missing in the World Wrestling Federation for about the last 5 or 6 months has been me.
Yeah.
I've ever seen.
I just want to say that people ask me, why am I coming back? Why do I want to come back?
Yeah, why?
Money.
It's not that much fun sometimes, especially if you can afford not to come back and get kicked around and beat up. It's a tough job and it's a hard way of life. And I got to go home and spend a lot of time with my family. There's this one little boy in Canada that basically worshiped me. And I was his biggest hero. And it's something I take an incredible amount of pride in. And this little boy, one day he got real sick. And it didn't take very long. It took just a matter of a few hours. And this little boy became the sickest little boy in Canada. And I went to his bedside. And I promised this little boy on his last legs, when they didn't think he would make it through the night, I promised this little boy that if he would just pull out of that, if he'd just come through, if he could just kick out, that I would come out of retirement for him. And as soon as I said that in his ear, he started to come out of it. Well, I wish I could tell you I have a happy ending here, but I don't. Just when we thought this little boy was going to turn the corner, he didn't. And that little boy passed away. And that little boy was my nephew. But the reason that I've decided to come back, and people can think all they want to, and they can guess that I've come back, that I planned this out a long time ago, but the fact of the matter is, from that very day, I promised myself that I would come back and I would give wrestling fans and little kids all around the world somebody that they can look up to, somebody that doesn't necessarily hey, I can't dance and I don't pose too well for girly books. But I am the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. And I'm back. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So what did you think?
Great babyface promo. And you don't hear too many long ones like that in the middle of the show.
Right.
But Vince wasn't setting a gorilla to make her to shut her down. I thought it was great.
At this point, he probably could have did whatever the hell he wanted, right? I mean,
yeah, oh yeah,
yeah,
no doubt.
So we're getting to our main event now. We see Hunter coming to the ring. This is going to be a big segment, but you know, this return, if you will, for Bret Hart has been discussed a lot over the years. What do you think of that segment? Would that segment stand up today in 2021?
I think it would. I think it would. I think the more honest you can be with your audience, and the better off you are. So that's my take on that deal. Reality based. That was very reality based, because I could promise you that no writer was harmed in the filming of that segment. In other words, it's Bret's words, his feelings, and so forth. So I think it would have held up today. You'd have some heel fans, you know, that would be catcalling and things of that nature.
We want to mention Meltzer's right up here. He says Hart gave probably the best interview of his career and one of the best interviews you'll ever see, basically acknowledging the very items he was going back and forth with in his own head over the past several months. Hart talked about the death of his nephew, Matthew Annis, over the summer and how he had promised him he would return to wrestling. The story Hart spoke of was true, as he told Annis if he'd get better, he promised to return to wrestling. Actually, at the time, he said at SummerSlam, and that for a brief moment, Annis responded. Hart both praised Shawn Michaels as a great wrestler, didn't complain about the finish of the WrestleMania match, simply saying he had lost and didn't take losing well, and said he was tougher than Michaels and smarter than Michaels, and made remarks about not being able to dance, maybe not being as cute, and not posing in girly magazines. Now, of course, that girly magazine talk is going to ultimately become a talking point between their real life relationship, Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. As the legend goes, by the way, the original creative that Vince had in mind, quote, Hart had been asked over the weekend by WWF to, in a dramatic fashion, rip up the WCW contract on the live interview as a retaliation for things such as Medusa throwing the WWF women's belt in the garbage can, but refused to do so. So, yeah, Vince maybe was, what do they say? Gotten to. He wanted him to rip up the WCW offer, but it didn't happen.
And it didn't matter. I mean, would that have made the interview better or worse?
No,
I don't think so. In a moment like that, you really need to rely on the instincts of your talent. As our beloved Gorilla Monsoon steps into the ring, there's a whole pass. And look, old JR's back in there.
We got a big announcement here. Let's take a listen.
McMahon, let me take care of some business here. What's going on? What do you mean, what's going on? Everybody saw what you did, Helmsley. You think you pulled a big one off? You run the card into the back of my leg. Now I got Gorilla Monsoon out here talking to the doctors in the back, telling me I can't wrestle you tonight. You think you pulled it off?
Based on what the doctor has told me, I'm not allowing Mr. Perfect to wrestle here tonight.
Wait a minute.
Because he's a chicken. You got no guts, Perfect?
I'm not allowing him to wrestle here tonight, period.
Then what of the president?
I'll tell you what I've done, Helmsley. Mark Merrow, the stand-up kind of guy that he is, and the information that I gave him that brought him the Intercontinental Championship, stand-up guy offered to wrestle you in my place.
Huh? Look, I don't have any contract to wrestle him. I'm under no obligation. I want him. I'm under no obligation to wrestle him, Monsoon.
That's right. That's exactly correct. You are not obligated to your contract to wrestle this gentleman. He is not wrestling here tonight, so you can leave if you like.
Wait a minute. You don't have the guts to wrestle Merrow? No, you'd wrestle him, right? No problem. Merrow will wrestle you.
I'll tell you what. The only way I'll wrestle him is if he puts that on the line. Put the Intercontinental title on the line and let's do it.
He'll do that in a heartbeat. I mean, what kind of champion are you? Show him what kind of champion. Of course he'll wrestle you.
Wait a minute, it's up to Gorilla Monsoon.
You know, Mr. Perfect, you helped me out to win the Intercontinental belt. I'm going to return the favor. Let's get it on!
That's Gorilla Monsoon giving his permission.
Excuse me, Mr. Perfect, you cannot sanction this match. Only I can sanction an Intercontinental title match.
Are you saying he can't wrestle?
I'm saying if he agrees to put the title on the line and you agree to accept the match, I will officially make it.
If the belt's on the line, I agree.
The match is made. Let's do it.
Ah, yes, ladies and gentlemen, the Intercontinental.
Right there, see it, move right there, Conrad.
Yep.
I got through that second rope. If you pull those ropes down and let it go, right in the AM bag.
Fantastic. We come back from break here and we see the action is already underway. Of course, this is the wild man, Mark Merrow, and both of these guys had a little cup of coffee over in WCW. I guess Johnny B. Bads was a little longer than John Paul Levesque, but of course, Hunter came over in 95, and then a year later, what do you know? Here's Mark Merrow in 96. So a couple of guys are switching jerseys, coming from the WCW side of things and moving north here. But we know that Hunter's career looked a little different than Mark Merrow's. And unfortunately, Sable, his manager on the outside, his real life wife, Rena Merrow, she ultimately would outshine him. And it's interesting how, you look at the way things started here in this feud. And I think a lot of people probably would have predicted, given the quote unquote heat, brother, of the curtain call, that Mark Merrow might have had a bigger upside in the WWF, at least from a fan's perspective. What did the office think? Did the office think that Hunter was more money than Merrow?
Yeah. But they also thought that Sable was more money than either one of them.
There you go.
I remember Vince calling me to his office after he and I met with Mark and Rena. And he called me back in, and I showed him to the door and got in their car and all that stuff. He calls me back in his office and says, "Did you see what I saw?" So of course I said, "I don't know if I did or not." He said, "Well, she's a star." I said, "Oh yeah, she is a star. It's hard to take your eyes off of her." And folks didn't take their eyes off of her. I mean, she's popped minute by minute numbers just walking out the ring wearing a T-shirt or something or selling something. She had the it factor that you can't manufacture. But I think Mark could have had a better run in WWF at the time, without a doubt. And what a nice man. Good guy. He's a good guy now, does a lot of motivational speaking. He's a good human being without question. And I just think the world of him as a human being. He was a Dusty Rhodes creation. And Dusty really fell in love with the Johnny B. Bad character. I remember that line, you know, I'm so pretty, I should have born a little girl. I should have been born a little girl, Conrad. Conrad, can you imagine me and you had been born girls? God damn, would have been ugly. Whew. No offense. I'm sorry. I'll speak for myself going forward.
No, I'm for it. Listen, we got mirrors here in Alabama. I know what I look like with long hair.
Yeah.
I want to mention, as we're about to see a pretty big moment here. I mean, a title switch on Raw these days, maybe not that big a deal, but back then it was. We just saw a big knee drop from Hunter here on Mark Merrow's head too. That was the entire time shot with the hard cam. And of course, from that angle, you could see that Hunter didn't exactly nail it. And of course, these days, the WWF probably overcompensates for that. Just a few weeks ago, there was a moment on SmackDown where Roman and Brock had some interaction, some physicality, if you will. And they counted, there were 11 jump cuts in 13 seconds or some such.
Golly.
And it feels as if this has been an edict, whether it's from Vince McMahon or Kevin Dunn, that in order to protect the business, brother, we want to make sure in this HD world that we're never showing that some of these punches aren't full throttle, if you will.
Yeah.
And as a result, a lot of fans are complaining that the show is just damn dizzying to watch now. What do you think of this controversy that exists online with fans who hate the new WWE style of cut from a production standpoint?
Well, don't overthink it. You know, I don't know if it's the hill you want to die on or not, quite frankly. But I'm in a broad stroke, you know, you shouldn't execute things that you don't do well. And, you know, I don't know, you know, I didn't see that scenario you just described with Brock and Roman. But nonetheless, they both know what they need to do. And they are going a little bit overboard. They meaning pronoun boy, goddamn pronoun boy. God damn you, Conrad. You're sitting there naked and rich and you're a billionaire. I don't know. I think it's much to do about not a lot. They're right. Do it right. And you shouldn't have to do these things. But I think they may take things like that a little overboard at times. They may want to talk to their talent if they have the balls to talk to Roman or Brock about something that didn't succeed. I don't know how you expect those two dudes to be on the money. How long's it been since Brock was in a match?
Yeah, it's been a while. Let's track it here as we listen to the end of this match with Mark Merrow and Hunter Hearst Helmsley.
You can only find here in the World Wrestling Federation. Hunter Hearst Helmsley reversing. No, here we go. No. Look out. Oh, no. Oh, I got to go see it, Merrow. Come on, Merrow. Come on, don't interfere in this. I'm not going to interfere in anything. Helmsley sliding to the outside. I can't see that. They just grabbed a chair. Helmsley has a chair. The officials down. Sable's watching. Sable's trying to grab the chair. Wait a minute. Hunter. Go ahead.
Boom. Long fly ball down the left field line. It was Fair's out of here. Referee Tim White, owner of the Friendly Tap, finally clearing his head, fighting Irishman. Rena is beside herself, a.k.a. Sable. And you don't take your eyes off of her.
Boy, Merrow knew how to sell that chair shot, didn't he?
Yeah. He's a good soldier, man. Sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and he just, like my chair in Oklahoma. And he never made any complaints. And that might have hurt him in the long run, to be honest with you, as silly as it sounds. So now we have a new, as said by Howard Finkel.
This whole thing has been a hoax. This whole thing, you might call it a perfect hoax. I can't believe what you're seeing here tonight on Raw. I can't believe this. Mr. Perfect, the new Intercontinental Champion.
So there you go. I mean, I would have loved to have seen that pay off. I'm a huge Mr. Perfect fan. I think most people listening to this probably are too. And the idea that we didn't really see it pay off is disappointing, but we did see something else start to bubble up when we saw Stone Cold watching on a monitor backstage with, as you mentioned, T.O. Hopper and the loose cannon Brian Pillman. And when Bret announced that at Survivor Series, he would be facing Steve Austin, immediately Brian Pillman started clapping and cheering, and Austin gave him quite the go to hell look. We know that's going to pay off because we're going to see him attack Brian Pillman in the coming months and put hard times on him when he puts his fused ankle in a chair and jumps off the top rope on it. And then that leads to the whole home invasion. And boy, a new era of the WWF is here. But man, that was a quick Raw. An hour-long Raw leaves you wanting more. Nobody really probably says that these days after a 3-hour Raw. And
it's a little rugged.
I think lessons were learned on the Nitro side of things. A 3-hour live show, it's just hard to keep your attention every single Monday, week in, week out. But this 1-hour show, this was pretty good, man.
Yeah, it's kind of like comparing Dynamite on Wednesday nights on TNT and Rampage on Friday nights. That 1-hour show on Friday nights seems like it just flies by.
It does.
And I think that the 1-hour format certainly still got its place, but 2 would be my absolute limit unless you're doing a pay-per-view and people are paying for more, and you get more with on a pay-per-view. So, you know, I know Art.
Let my family save your family some cash. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket, but we will save you money. It's not a matter if, it's a matter of how much. SaveWithConrad.com.
The next pay-per-view is going to be in Minneapolis. Sorry to say St. Paul. Be there too. Twin Cities. And tickets are moving well, by the way. AEWTX.com. But yeah, I think the 1-hour thing still works. I don't see Rampage going to 2 hours. I don't see any of Tony Khan's over-the-air content ever going to 3 hours. But, you know, who the hell knows for sure. But I would be surprised if that ever happened. I think we've all learned good lessons about these 3-hour Raws. It's not done for artistic benefit. It's done for the money. USA's paying a lot more money for that third hour of primetime television. That's live every week. So, but to me, it's a little bit long. I had a hard time the other night watching the Brady Belichick reunion. It's just, the game just seemed like it went on forever.
Yeah.
And sad to say, as a football mark as I am, but the game got a little long for me toward the fourth quarter.
Well, we hope we haven't gone too long for you today, but don't worry. We'll be back next week talking all things No Mercy 2001. It's going to feature Steve Austin defending his WWF World title against Kurt Angle and Rob Van Dam. It's Rob Van Dam's first main event for the WWF. Chris Jericho will be taking on The Rock for the WCW title, and the program we've been waiting for really since Jericho's debut back in '99. The Undertaker will be in there with Booker T. We've got Edge versus Christian in a ladder match and so much more. But in the meantime, you need to cruise over to jrsbbq.com.
Come on over.
If you haven't been checking out the all-purpose seasoning, what are you waiting for? We plug it every week because I love it, but every time I log into social, somebody else is bragging about the ketchup or the mustard, or of course, sauce it, baby. There's something for everybody at jrsbbq.com, right, Jim?
Absolutely. And Conrad, we also have copies of Slobberknocker and Under the Black Hat that you can go on our site and order your copy. And I'll personalize it. There's a little box there. You tell me what you want me to say. They make great gift ideas. So something to think about as we get closer, every day, a step closer to the holidays. And you're looking for books for a wrestling fan or looking for gifts for a wrestling fan. We've also got gift boxes, all kinds of good stuff. So Stephen Link does a great job there managing that property. It's growing every day, and we're proud and grateful for that. So jrsbbq.com. Think about us for gift giving, and think about how it's going to feel on your palate, or as McMahon would say, as mankind would stick his mandible claw down somebody's gullet. Did you ever use the term gullet in anything in your whole fucking life? I never did.
No,
Gullet.
I've never said gullet before.
Gullet. So we'll just let Vince have the franchise on that deal.
Notwithstanding.
Yeah, gullet's all yours, baby. So.
Well, listen, this has been fun. Shove some JR's BBQ in your gullet at jrsbbq.com. We'll be back next week checking out No Mercy 2001. Want to mention, if you'd like to advertise your product or service here on the program, we'd love to have your business at advertisewithconrad.com. And of course, who could forget adfreeshows.com? Jim, we've got more bonus content over there than we can shake a stick out. We've got some old.
That you can do what?
More than we can shake a stick at.
Oh, that's not what you said. You said shake a stick out.
Okay, you know what? Then you need to get your shit together and quit saying big shit.
I know. Shit. You're right.
Let me fucking go, Jim. Hey, we're having a lot of fun over here, and the fun continues on adfreeshows.com. We've got the old radio show from Atlanta. We've got old car trips with you and Tony Schiavone on camera. And we've even got you watching some old UWF, some old Mid-South action. There's something for everybody at adfreeshows.com, including all of our shows here early and ad-free.
Yeah. How did your interview? I haven't watched it yet, to be totally honest. And with Jerry Jarrett go? I saw the highlights on social and looked at very, very compelling.
I'll make sure I get you a link. I think you're going to dig it. It's going to be a two-parter, but I don't think enough people really understand the historical significance for Memphis as a territory, and more specifically, Jerry Jarrett as a promoter. You look at all the folks who went through his territory, and they include a who's who. Yes, yeah. Ric Flair was there defending his world title against Jerry Lawler. Yes, Andre the Giant was there, but let's talk about early beginnings. He shot the first vignette of Hulk Hogan in 1979. 1979. They call him the Hulk. That's in 79.
Right.
And it happened in Jarrett's basement, but also the creation of Kamala. How about The Rock cut his teeth in Memphis? Of course, Stone Cold Steve Austin worked for Jerry Jarrett. What about the Macho Man? I mean, you could even go back to Sting and the Ultimate Warrior, just one after another. It's all the legends of professional wrestling at one point or another came through his territory, and we got to pick his brain in a special sit-down interview, Conversations with Conrad, that's exclusively at adfreeshows.com.
Yes, what I've seen, the little snippets, seem to really be entertaining. So if you're a historical person, you like the history of wrestling and the traditions, and which I love, quite frankly. It's kind of what our show here is based on, nostalgia and going back in time and reflecting on how where I was in that. And as just because it does say Grilling with JR, it should have a little I enjoy the going back and remembering things. Like I remember that jacket today. That jacket was an action figure. I don't know how they did that, but nonetheless, it was kind of cool. So, and that was a jacket my little bride Jan got me. So I don't even know where the hell that son of a bitch is either, that jacket. Isn't it funny how you lose shit? I probably lost more memorabilia giving it away. She used to give my hats away until she found out they cost $1,000 a piece. And so I got busted on that deal. So no, but we didn't give him more. We didn't give any more hats away for a while. So anyhow, I think this Jarrett thing's going to be real good, and I still think that another one. I know you and I have talked about it unofficially. Sit down with Cowboy, because you haven't done Cowboy yet, have you?
No, sir, I have not.
I think it's going to be, if you can get it done. And I know you got to travel to him. He lives up there in the Ozarks and all that stuff. Same basic kind of stories, all the different people the Cowboy started. And ironically, there's a connection with Cowboy and Jerry Jarrett, because we made a big trade for them that I think we came out the better for it, because we got, the Midnight Express was created by Cowboy Bill Watts. And we got this guy, Bill Dundee, to come in and book. It was great. Bill did a good job. So I think that and rock and roll came in for us. So I think Cowboy and Jerry have a lot in common in that regard. The bottom line is this: they both had great eyes for talent. And when you're a sponge like me, who just loves everything pro wrestling, in that era when I was, younger, getting into the ball, doing all these different things, what an education. And I don't know that I quite appreciated as much then as I do now. How much I learned from guys like Jerry Jarrett and Bill Watts and so forth. And I always thought it unique, I'm sure you talked about with Jarrett, that the fact that he would book the territory in Memphis for half a year and Lawler would book it for half a year. I always thought that was kind of interesting. Because normally a booker, when he's the booker, it's like having an appointment to the Supreme Court. You got it for life, so to speak, especially when you own it. So I always thought that was good. So I'm looking forward to seeing that interview. And all the ones you've done have been great. This Jim Herd stuff was great because you just get a different perspective of these dudes. So I think nobody else is doing anything like this at Conrad, and you folks owe it to yourself, especially in the ad-free network. That's the way to go anyway. Subscribe, join, play with us. Come along. And I guarantee you won't be disappointed.
And you won't be disappointed if you check out JR's work every Wednesday night on TNT. Of course, we're only talking old things here. We love talking about the good old days of professional wrestling, but the voice of wrestling is still at it every Wednesday night on TNT. It's AEW Dynamite. Until next week, he is at JR's BBQ. I am at Hey, it's Conrad, and we are out of time. We'll see you next week right here for Grillin' JR with the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross.
Thanks, Conrad. Enjoy the show, folks. Hope you liked it as well. Tell your friends about it. Drops every Thursday or earlier on the ad-free network. So on behalf of my friend Conrad, my God, that pink shirt is titillizing. Can I see your nipples? Just one. Just one nipple. Oh, my God. All right, Conrad. Enough of this bullshit. Let's have a great week. Folks, we'll see you next week. Thanks.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.